At the beginning of the drama, there's a beautiful woman in her 20s. She had just woken up, and that day she was going to go to work. But before that, she had to take care of her unemployed father first. This woman named Kim Salha. She was a tough but poor woman, so she had to work hard to support her family needs. And now her father was asking for money from her because he wanted to remarry. Salha works as a graphic designer, and at her workplace she's very admired by many people, thanks to her very warm nature and being able to get along well. At Salha's office, there is a girl who's very cold and shy. Even that girl is always alone and seems distant from Salha and the others. The girl's name is Ji Yun. Long story short, after finishing work, Salha went home with her workmate, Dusik. At that time, Dusik asked about Salha's love story. Rumor has it that Salha was very close to a popular man, and he's very handsome and rich. That man's name was Jae-sun. After that, Salha told her love story. It turned out that Salha's love was one-sided. However, Salha was very optimistic, and she believed that if she and Jae-sun met again, Salha would be able to get Jae-sun's heart. Apparently, Jae-sun was behind Salha and heard all her words. Seeing Jae-sun there, Salha was embarrassed and immediately left. But on her way, Salha realized that deep down her heart couldn't lie. Therefore, Salha immediately decided to go to Jae-sun's cafe. Jae-sun was a very cold person and ignorant. Even Jae-sun doesn't have any friends who are close to him. Salha continued to watch Jae-sun from a distance. She can only love but cannot own him. At that time, suddenly, there was an arrogant woman who threw a white cat to Jae-sun. Apparently, the woman was Jae-sun's ex-girlfriend, and she returned the cat that Jae-sun gave her. That night, Jae-sun wanted to take the cat home and look after it. Even though Jae-sun didn't want to look after the cat because it always reminded him of his ex, Salha, who found out about this, felt sorry for him. On the way home, Salha stopped Jae-sun. She didn't want to see the person she liked always remembered his ex-girlfriend. Therefore, she immediately asked for the cat to be taken care of. Then Salha went home with the cat. When she got home, the cat immediately ran and Salha took a shower to get rid of her body odor. But when Salha was taking a shower under the bed, someone took Salha's towel. It turned out that the cat Salha had brought was not an ordinary cat. It had just been free from the curse. The next day before going to work, Salha got into a fight with her father because at that time, her father intended to sell the apartment to pay for his wedding. And the cat also overheard their argument. After Salha went to work, the cat transformed into a human being. He even went around all the rooms, then he opened a room and found Salha's father was lying unconscious. He immediately took Salha's father out of the apartment, and then Salha's father was taken by his neighbor to the hospital. Meanwhile, Salha was having a break time with Dusik, then she got a call telling her that her father was at the hospital. Hearing this, Salha immediately went to the hospital. When she arrived at the hospital, Salha was very surprised because there she met her father's girlfriend. After that, they became acquainted. Here, Salha found out that her father's girlfriend really loved her father. She's very loyal to accompany and take care of Salha's father until nightfall. Scene moves on, showing the cat, which has the ability to transform into a human being as he pleases. At that moment, he is fascinated by Salha's beauty, who walks past him with a face full of sadness. The cat man then followed Salha from behind. Salha, who was sad, then sat on the edge of the river, and the cat man also sat beside Salha. Here, Salha thought that the one sitting beside her was Jae-sun, so she immediately confessed that she was currently sad because she had just found out that her father had a serious heart disease. She even confided in her father's girlfriend, who seemed to love her father so much. When Salha turned her face, she was very surprised because her pet cat was already next to her. Salha, who felt lonely, made the cat her friend. Long story short, a few days have passed and now Salha's father is married and Salha's apartment has been officially sold. Salha's father will live in his new wife's house while Salha has been bought a new house by her stepmother. Even though it's hard, like it or not, Salha has to live in the house her stepmother gave her because she realized that she didn't have enough savings to buy her own house. Apparently, Salha's new house was opposite Jae-sun's cafe. Salha really couldn't believe that from now on, she would be very close to Jae-sun. On the next day before going to work, Salha had prepared all the necessities for her cat, which she now considers her best friend. Even though the cat often annoys her, Salha always takes good care of the cat. While the cat, he is now able to transform into a human, sees that Salha's cell phone was left behind. He felt sorry for Salha, and he immediately took Salha's cell phone and immediately ran after her. At work, Salha was punished by her boss because she didn't come to work for several days, so now Salha has to work overtime to finish all her work. Salha works as a graphic designer, and this time she gets a photo of a cat as the object of her work. And this makes Salha miss her pet cat. Even when night falls, Salha doesn't work and only feels a heavy longing for the cat. Meanwhile, the cat man is now waiting for Salha to come home, and until midnight, she had not yet come home. Salha worked overtime until morning, and that morning it rained very heavily. At Salha's house, the cat felt anxious because Salha had not yet come home. The cat then took the initiative to pick up Salha at the bus stop and bring an umbrella. Then, when Salha got off the bus, suddenly there was someone covering her. But unfortunately, it turned out that person was Jason. The cat man who saw Salha with another man only can be sad, and it seems like he likes Salha. He became even sadder when he saw Jason rubbing Salha's cheek. Then when Salha arrived home, she saw the cat's food still intact, meaning her pet cat had not eaten. Salha then took the initiative to give milk to the cat, and fortunately, the cat wanted to drink the milk. While looking at her very cute pet cat, Salha finally gave the cat a name, and the cat was named Hongjo. When night came, Salha had a fever and her body felt sore because she had not slept enough. When she looked for medicine, Salha saw Hongjo, who was lying limp. Salha saw that Hongjo was sick, so she didn't care about herself and immediately rushed to take Hongjo to the animal hospital. After getting some treatment, Salha then brought Hongjo home and immediately put him to sleep on her bed. While Salha was willing to sleep on the floor so that Hongjo felt comfortable and recovered quickly. After Salha fell asleep, Hongjo saw that Salha was having a fever, so he immediately took care of her. When the morning came, Salha's fever had gone down and she had recovered. After feeding Hongjo, Salha got a message from Jason, who told her that he sent medicine for her. After taking the medicine, Salha, who could now see Jason every day, said that she had recovered because of Jason. Hongjo, who heard Salha's words, felt sad because Salha thought that her recovery was because of Jason, not because of him. At work, Ji-yeon, who was very shy, finally had the courage to talk to her co-workers. Even at that time, Ji-yeon wanted to talk with Dusik, and it seemed like Ji-yeon had a crush on Dusik. Seeing this, Salha felt very happy because in the end, her two best friends can now be close to each other. Long story short, that afternoon when Salha came home from work, she saw Hongjo was on the roof of Jason's cafe. Salha was very worried, so she immediately took a ladder and went up to save Hongjo. But when Salha arrived at the roof, it turned out that Hongjo had already come down. Then when Salha went down using the ladder, she suddenly slipped and fell. But fortunately, Hongjo, with his human appearance, managed to save Salha. They then looked at each other, and when Salha came back looking for Hongjo, Hongjo immediately turned into a cute cat and went straight home. That evening, Salha was still thinking about the man who saved her earlier, and she noticed Hongjo's eyes, which were very similar to the man. Long story short, the next day, Hongjo took Salha's toothbrush. Hongjo can only turn into a human when he is holding or close to Salha, and now he took Salha's toothbrush so he could accompany Salha in his human appearance. Even while riding the bus, Hongjo continues to follow Salha. However, Salha is a little uncomfortable because there's a man following her. But because that man saved her yesterday, Salha can't do anything. Hongjo continues to follow Salha, even following her until her office. Salha was a little annoyed, then asked him not to follow her anymore. Hearing this, Hongjo immediately left Salha's office. Hongjo then walked home to Salha's house. When he arrived home, Hongjo was very tired and immediately fell asleep. He didn't have time to hide the doll from Salha. When Salha came home, she was surprised because as far as she remembered, she had locked all the doors. She became even more confused when the toothbrush that she usually used disappeared from where it was. Then Salha was very afraid that there was a ghost in her house. When nightfall came, Salha, who was very scared, accidentally stepped on the doll that she had given to the mysterious man. She was very scared, then ran to Jae-sun's house and immediately asked for help. Jae-sun then checked Salha's house. At that time, Salha also told Jae-sun about the irregularities that had just happened, starting from the open window, the toothbrush which disappeared, to the doll that she had given to someone, but it was already at her house. After everything was safe before Jae-sun going home, Salha invited him to eat instant noodles first. While Salha was cooking, her hand touched the hot pot, so Jae-sun tried to treat Salha's burns. At that time, both of them were carried away by their own feelings, and when they were about to kiss, Hongjo suddenly appeared in his human appearance. At that moment, Salha's stepmother suddenly called and told Salha that her son was going to come. Salha's stepmother said that her son was a very handsome man and he's 2 years older than Salha. Hearing this, Salha suddenly thought that the guy in front of her now was her stepmother's son. The next day, Salha immediately went to Dusik and told him if she currently lives with her stepmother's son. Salha said that her stepmother's son was a bit annoying. He even acted like a clueless child. Then Dusik invited Jae-sun to go to Salha's house tonight to meet the person Salha told him about. After that, Solha went home to tidy up her house, and Hongjo always helped her, like ironing the clothes, cleaning up the trash, to accompanying Solha to shopping. That evening, Jae-sun and Do-sik came to Solha's house. Do-sik was very excited to prank Hongjo, but unfortunately, at that time, Hongjo turned into a cat. So they couldn't find the guy who Solha meant. Because that guy wasn't there, in the end, they got drunk together. Hongjo and his human appearance observed all of them. While they were drunk, Do-sik needed to pee, so now it was just Solha and Jae-sun. At that moment, Solha talked about Jae-sun, who once left her. A long time ago, the two of them were officially dating because it turned out that at that time, Jae-sun kissed Solha. But after that incident, Jae-sun left Solha without any news. And this time, Solha asked the reason why Jae-sun left her. Jae-sun could only apologize and couldn't explain what was actually happened. Long story short, when the night was getting late after Jae-sun came home, Solha uploaded a webtoon she created which told about the love story of Solha and Jae-sun. With full confidence, Solha hoped that Jae-sun would see the webtoon she wrote. The next day, all of Solha's friends at the office were excited because they saw Solha's webtoon. Meanwhile, Hongjo, who could now turn into a human as he pleased, learning from a kid to learn how to live like a human, starting from reading, memorizing the street, to learning to eat at a cafe. Hongjo learns all about it. On the other hand, to celebrate Solha's newly released webtoon, Solha's workmates went to Jae-sun's cafe to have coffee together. At that time, Jae-sun recognized Ji-yeon, who turned out to be his teenage friend. Apparently, Solha, Jae-sun, Do-sik, and Ji-yeon had been in the same class during high school. In fact, they all still had the Ring of Memories, which was the hallmark of their class. At that time, Do-sik asked Jae-sun's response about Solha's webtoon. Surprisingly, Jae-sun said that the webtoon was a bit boring, and he even suggested that Solha to create a new theme for her next webtoon story. Hearing this, Solha immediately felt sad because the webtoon is actually a love story about Solha who loves Jae-sun so much. However, Jae-sun didn't like it. At the same time, Do-sik opened Solha's webtoon, which received scathing comments from netizens. Seeing this reality, Solha was very devastated and then immediately said goodbye to go home. Solha went home in a bad mood and she's very sad. Even when she arrived home, Solha immediately vented her sadness to Hongjo, who at that time was reading her webtoon. Hongjo understood that Solha was sad, then he gave encouragement to her. Even Hongjo said that Solha's webtoon was very good because it contained a message about the meaning of life. Knowing that someone likes her webtoon, Solha then invites Hongjo to have a drink together. At that time, Hongjo asked about the relationship between Solha and Jae-sun. Solha had then said that they had previously dated but only lasted for one day because after Jae-sun confessed his love for her, he disappeared. Solha had then said even though Jae-sun was like that, he always came back to her. Hongjo then denied Solha's words because according to him, Jae-sun didn't come back, but Solha was the one who's still hoping for Jae-sun. Hongjo thought that Solha was too naive because she still hoped for the person who had left her without saying anything. Hearing the words, Solha immediately fell silent and realized that it was true that all this time Jae-sun had not returned, but Solha was the one who always returned to hope to Jae-sun. After realizing everything, Solha then went to Jae-sun. There, Solha immediately asked for an explanation from Jae-sun, who had previously left her without a reason. Jae-sun didn't answer, even he looks cold and indifferent when Solha begs for his love. After she found out that Jae-sun is very indifferent, Solha cried and immediately went back to her house. The next day, Solha decided not to continue her webtoon story because she felt that her love story with Jae-sun has really over. This made Do-sik very surprised because as far as he knew, Solha was madly fallen in love with Jae-sun. But now Solha looked like someone who had just been free from a painful bound. Meanwhile, Hongjo was now starting to free wander around the city and adapted to be a normal human being. At that time, he smelled the fish aroma, and it was very tempting for him. Hongjo didn't know anything, so he bought lots of fish on the menu at the restaurant. But after he finished eating, Hongjo could only remain silent when the owner of the restaurant asked for the money because he didn't know how to pay. Because of that, Hongjo had to work there, and it turned out that the restaurant was owned by Do-sik's parents. On the weekend, Do-sik arranged a blind date for Solha. When she arrived at the location, Solha instead met Hongjo, who would go on a blind date too. After that, they waited in a park. After waiting for a long time, Solha then realized that the blind date that Do-sik had arranged was actually a blind date with Hongjo. Even though she was annoyed, Solha decided to go out with Hongjo. At first, it felt very boring, but thanks to Hongjo's innocence, the atmosphere changed and Solha even looked very happy. Not only that, Hongjo was able to win the guessing game and they even took all the doll gifts at that place. After that, they went home happily. And when Jae-sun tried to stop Solha, she just ignored him and said that now she had felt freedom. Solha's happiness suddenly disappeared when Jae-sun said that the cat he entrusted to Solha would be taken by someone else tomorrow. Hearing this, Hongjo the cat felt shocked and very sad because he realized that he would be separated from Solha. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Ji-yeon, who was shopping, accidentally met with Dusik. He took the drink that Ji-yeon would buy. However, outside, Dusik gave Ji-yeon the drinks, and this made Ji-yeon a little enchanted. On the way home, Dusik followed Ji-yeon from behind because he wanted to know Ji-yeon's house. However, Ji-yeon was embarrassed and she ended up running like a scared person. Then the next day, Solha had given up her cat to be taken by someone else, so she prepared all the necessities for the cat. Meanwhile, Hongjo realized that he could only transform into a human if he held Solha's belongings. Therefore, he asked Solha to give some of her things for the cat. Even though it sounds strange, Solha still obeyed Hongjo's words. Because on that day, Solha had to work like it or not, she had to entrust her cat to Hongjo to give the cat to someone else. At the office, Solha's boss gave a fairly large project to all her employees. To complete the project, the boss formed a team so that it could be finished faster. And here Solha was in a team with Dusik and Ji-yeon. Long story short, after returning from work, Solha had just arrived at her house and immediately looked for her cat. But after searching for a long time, Solha couldn't find her cat. Because she couldn't find her cat at her house, Solha went to town to look for her cat. Across the street, Hongjo the cat man walked and he's sleepy. Hongjo then went home to Solha's house. When he got there, outside, Hongjo met Jae-sun who had come to take his cat. Firmly, Hongjo answered that the cat was no longer there. After that, Jae-sun accidentally met Solha. Jae-sun immediately became angry with Solha because she had been careless in letting the cat go. Jae-sun even said that Solha looked like she had thrown away the cat. Of course, Solha didn't accept it, so she said that she didn't throw away Hongjo the cat, but she threw away Jae-sun. Hearing this, Jae-sun immediately fell silent. After that, Solha went home. When she was going to change clothes, she found her cat in her cupboard drawer. Seeing Hongjo the cat was there, Solha immediately cried happily because she didn't get separated with her cat. Meanwhile, Jae-sun got a call from the person who was going to take the cat. It was said that person wouldn't come to take the cat. That night, when Solha and Hongjo were sleeping, someone came into the house. The next day, when Solha opened Hongjo's room, she saw someone with long hair and at a glance looked like a woman. Solha, who saw this, thought that Hongjo, his adopted brother, was keeping a woman in his room. And Solha continued to think about this at her office. At the same time, Jae-sun sent a message and asked Solha to meet later tonight. And that evening, Solha and Jae-sun met at Jae-sun's cafe. At that time, Jae-sun apologized because he had acted too much towards Solha. Jae-sun also apologized because he was going to give the cat to someone else. Then suddenly the cat was there. Jae-sun then wanted to catch Hongjo, but the cat ran away. Jae-sun didn't want to appear weak in front of Solha, then he immediately chased the cat. And when he looked for the cat in the warehouse, Jae-sun found the scarf that Solha had previously used. At that time, suddenly, in his human appearance, Hongjo took the scarf. The scene then shows a flashback. When Hongjo was a kid, it turned out that Solha once gave the scarf to Hongjo, and at that time, little Hongjo turned into a cat. And one night, when Jae-sun wanted to meet Solha, Jae-sun stopped when he saw a cat which was wearing a scarf and was thrown away by its owner. It turned out that the reason Jae-sun left Solha that day was because Jae-sun chose to carry the cat and took it home. Hearing this fact, Hongjo fell silent because he felt and thought that maybe the person who threw him away was Solha, because that scarf was from her. Because of that, Hongjo could only contemplate and look at Solha when she was asleep. In the morning when he had just woken up, Hongjo saw someone fixing the lamp in the house. That person's name is Bang Gukbong. She is the son of Solha's stepmother, and he already knows about Solha, his stepfather's daughter. Hongjo is worried that Solha would find out that he is not her stepmother's son. Therefore, he always prevents Solha from meeting Bang Gukbong. After Solha left, Bang Guk appeared, and luckily he didn't meet Solha. Then Bang Guk felt a little suspicious because Hongjo looked like he was hiding something. Hongjo then said that from the start he didn't want to hide all of this. But this time, Hongjo really likes Solha and he doesn't want to be part with her. Then that afternoon, Hongjo went to Jae-sun's cafe to take Solha's scarf. At that time, Solha also came there to look for Hongjo. When Solha went to the warehouse, she found her scarf, which she had previously gave to a little boy. Jae-sun then explained that he had found the cat that Solha had thrown away. Hearing that, Solha feels surprised because she never threw away the scarf, let alone a cat. Jae-sun then explained that the reason he didn't meet Solha at that time was because Jae-sun saw that the scarf had been thrown away, even though the scarf was a gift from Jae-sun, which he used to test Solha's love. Hearing this, Solha was disappointed because she thought that it was just an excuse and his alibi to break up with her. Solha also said that if Jae-sun really loved her, then he didn't need to test anything. Jae-sun also didn't need to make excuses for breaking up just because Solha threw away the scarf Jae-sun gave her. Solha asked Jae-sun not to make her the scapegoat for the failure of their relationship. After that, Solha went away carrying the scarf. Outside, Solha met Ji-yeon, and because she was upset, she invited Ji-yeon to get drunk together. That night, they both got drunk and talked about each other. Even Ji-yeon also keeps drinking soju. Solha tells the story of her failed love. Meanwhile, Ji-yeon tells about her feelings for her friend, and Ji-yeon has liked him since high school. And that person is Do-sik. After they both got drunk quite badly, they went home. On their way, they separated because their houses were different. Solha came home and she's very drunk. At that time, Solha almost fainted, but fortunately, Hongjo managed to hold her. After that, Solha went home, followed by Hongjo from behind. Meanwhile, Bang-guk went to Jae-sun's cafe. Jae-sun saw Bang-guk coming out of Solha's house and then asked who he was. Bang-guk then explained that he is the real son of Solha's stepmother. Hearing this, Jae-sun fell silent because as far as he knew, Hongjo is the son of Solha's stepmother. Meanwhile, at home, Hongjo was about to admit that he was not Bang-guk. But before that, Solha asked Hongjo who she thought was Bang-guk would not leave her. After that, Solha fainted. But at that time, Jae-sun caught Solha. After bringing Solha to her bedroom, Jae-sun, who already knew the real Bang-guk, then asked who was Hongju. Finally, Hongjo the cat man was honest and said that his name was Hongjo and he was a cat man. After that, Hongjo went to his room and Jae-sun followed him. When Jae-sun opened the door to Hongjo's room, Jae-sun was very surprised because it turned out that the man who claimed to be Hongjo had turned into a cat who had always been cared for by Solha. The next morning, when Sol had just woke up, she found Jae-sun sitting in front of her room. It turned out that Jae-sun hadn't slept all night and was guarding Solha's room so that Hongjo, the cat man, wouldn't come into Solha's room. And that afternoon, Jae-sun continues to watch and look at Hongjo. When Jae-sun looking outside, he saw a slightly strange man looking at Solha's house. Then, when Jae-sun approached the man, he suddenly left. Jae-sun returned to his cafe, but he couldn't find Hongjo, who was no longer there. It turned out that Hongjo had transformed, became human, and immediately ran away from there. That night, Jae-sun told Solha that he was going to say something very important. At that moment, suddenly the wood behind Solha was about to fall. Unfortunately, Jae-sun and Solha didn't realize it. And when the wood will fall on Solha, Hongjo immediately protects her with his human appearance. Solha then treats Hongjo at her house. After that, Hongjo realizes that all this cannot be continued, then he decides to come to Jae-sun and want to be honest with him if he is a cat who can turn into a human. Jae-sun asks how could Hongjo transform into a human. Hongjo then answered that as far as he remembered, he could become human because Solha. Jae-sun then warned Hongjo to leave immediately and don't mess with Solha. Hongjo begged Jae-sun not to tell Solha about this, and he promised not to become human again as long as Jae-sun didn't throw him away. On the next day, to always keep an eye on Hongjo, Jae-sun made him as an employee at his cafe. On the other hand, that day, Ji-yeon came to the office with some lunch boxes. When the lunch break arrived, Ji-yeon invited Solha and Do-sik to eat together. When they were going to eat, Solha deliberately said that she was going to toilet, even though Solha actually gave them time to talk privately. At that time, something accidentally fell from Ji-yeon's bag. Do-sik was curious and urged Ji-yeon to tell the truth whether Ji-yeon liked him or not. And surprisingly, Ji-yeon said that she really liked Do-sik. Ji-yeon was very embarrassed then left. And what had fallen from Ji-yeon's bag was an eraser that belonged to Do-sik when he was still in high school. When night fell outside of Solha's house, there was a mysterious person who was keep watching Solha's house. Jae-sun and Hongjo then approached that man, and it turned out that the man's intention to go there was to propose Solha. Hongjo immediately held Solha's hand, and Jae-sun saw this. Hongjo then threatened the mysterious man not to mess with Solha. After that, at her house before going to sleep, Solha washed the dishes and cleaned up the house. At that time, Hongjo helped Solha very romantically. At that moment, Solha talked about her mother who had passed away. And tomorrow, she will commemorate the anniversary of her mother's death. Hearing this, Hongjo felt sad, and to express his condolences, Hongjo invited Solha to commemorate the day together. The next day, Hongjo asked permission from Jae-sun not to work because he had an appointment with Solha. But unfortunately, Jae-sun didn't allow it. Meanwhile, Solha had just come home from work, and she was waiting for Hongjo to arrive at the place they had promised. And at that time, after finishing work, Hongjo immediately decided to meet Solha. But before that, he went looking for peaches first as a gift that he would give to Solha. Hongjo continued looking for it until night fell. On the other hand, Solha was already annoyed waiting for Hongjo, but she smiled when someone came approaching her. But unfortunately, that person was not Hongjo but Jae-sun. He took advantage of the moment and approached Solha, who was upset. He wanted to get back together with Solha and asked that they could have a friendship like before. Meanwhile, Hongjo had already very tired and he couldn't hold on anymore. He fainted and turned into a cat. On the other side, Jae-sun was on the way home and he accidentally found Hongjo's necklace. There, Jae-sun also found various kinds of canned peach drinks. Jae-sun was very sure that Hongjo had turned into a cat and it must have been taken by someone else. Knowing this, Jae-sun immediately went back to Solha and immediately told her that Hongjo had been kidnapped. Hearing this, Solha panicked and immediately looked for Hongjo. They had visited various places, but unfortunately, to no avail. This was already their second day looking for Hongjo, but they still couldn't find the cat. Until one night on their way home, they met a mysterious man who had been terrorizing Solha's house the other days. Jae-sun was very suspicious of this mysterious man's movements, so if the man felt cornered, he immediately ran away. Solha and Jae-sun immediately chased the man, and it turned out that the person who had brought Hongjo was him. That man immediately hid Hongjo because he was very afraid that Solha and Jae-sun would find the cat. After hiding Hongjo, not long after that, the man was very surprised because suddenly in his house there was a man. Hongjo was a cat who didn't want to be locked up, so he immediately released the other cats. But at that time, the man immediately stabbed Hongjo with a knife and Hongjo was injured on his hand. Outside, Solha and Jae-sun were trying to open the door of the house. When Solha managed to enter the house, Hongjo immediately transformed into a cat and the mysterious man saw this incident. Hongjo, who was injured, was immediately taken to the animal hospital. The hospital staff said that the cat had to be treated there, so like it or not, Solha had to leave Hongjo at the hospital. When Solha had returned home, he met Hongjo in his human appearance, who she still considered to be her stepbrother. Solha, who was disappointed because Hongjo didn't keep his promise, then simply ignored him. In the room, Solha really regretted Hongjo's attitude even though she really waited for his arrival. While outside of the room, Hongjo felt sorry and he could only reflect on his fate because Solha might hate him now. The next day at work, Solha couldn't focus and kept thinking about Hongjo, who she still considered to be Bang-guk, her stepbrother. Solha even kept calling Jae-sun sometimes just to ask about Hongjo, the innocent man who was currently attracted her. After that, Solha immediately went to Jae-sun's cafe. There, Jae-sun gave Solha peaches and said that Hongjo, who Solha thought of as Bang-guk, was late to meet Solha and kept his promise, because at that time, Hongjo looked for a very rare peach to give to Solha. Suddenly, Solha remembered that when they made an appointment, Solha told Hongjo that her late mother really liked peaches. Long story short, at office, Solha, Ji-yun, and Do-sik were asked to immediately complete their project. Therefore, the three of them had to work overtime to fulfill the client's request. While Solha was pensive alone while thinking about her life, which was sometimes a little disappointing, from behind Hongjo approached her. At that time, Hongjo said that he would leave from Solha's life and would not come into her life again. Hongjo added that he was going to go with the person he really liked. Hearing that, Solha was very surprised because in fact she really loved Hongjo, who she thought of as Bang-guk, her stepbrother. Solha then came home with a very broken heart. But after seeing the cat, her mood suddenly changed. While preparing Hongjo's food, Solha poured out her heart that actually she really loves her stepbrother and she will continue to defend her love whatever happens. And it turns out that from behind in his human form, Hongjo listened to Solha's outpouring of her heart. Then when Solha was outside, she saw Hongjo in his human appearance on the roof. He then invited Solha to enjoy the full moon together. At that time, Solha asked about Hongjo's plans who wanted to leave her for someone he loved. However, at that time, Hongjo didn't say a word and immediately kissed Solha. The next day, Hongjo went to the park and met a cat. Hongjo was planning to tell Solha about his true identity, but before that, the cat suddenly turned into a grandmother. The grandmother told Hongjo to not tell Solha that he was a cat, because after Hongjo couldn't be human anymore, Solha would hate Hongjo and his cat appearance. Suddenly, Hongjo realized it and he was immediately sad about his fate. Hanjo then told Jae-sun about this, and Jae-sun also advised Hanjo not to tell Solha, and Hanjo had to continue to be with Solha in his cat form. That afternoon after work, Hanjo immediately took Solha to the roof of the house. There, Hanjo firmly asked that they spend that day alone because tomorrow, Hanjo will go around the world and will not come back to Solha anymore. Hearing this, Solha's face immediately changed, became sad. The next day, Hanjo saw a picture of a webtoon story made by Solha, which told the story of Solha and Hanjo the cat. But at that time, Solha closed the laptop. Even though she was disappointed, Solha strengthened herself while saying goodbye to Hanjo because she was going to work and wouldn't take Hanjo to the airport. After that, Solha left with a very sad heart. At her office, Solha kept thinking about Hanjo, so she didn't respond when all of her friends asked her to talk. Until morning fell, Solha deliberately didn't go home and waited for Hanjo to leave first because she couldn't bear to see Hanjo leaving. Meanwhile, at Solha's house, Hanjo continued to wait for her while drinking coffee so that he wouldn't fall asleep, because if he fell asleep, then he would turn into a cat. Until midnight arrived, Solha came home and was immediately greeted by Hanjo, who apparently didn't leave her. Hanjo then explained that he wouldn't leave until the picture that Solha made for her latest webtoon story was finished. One night, when Solha and Hanjo were having fun together and enjoying the beautiful evening, Jae-sun was drunk and came to Solha's house. He said that he wanted to talk about something with them. At that time, while he was very drunk, Jae-sun almost slipped out and told the truth about Hanjo. But before that, Solha's stepmother suddenly called her and asked Solha to meet her parents because at this weekend, her father's birthday is coming up. Solha's stepmother asked Solha to invite Bang-guk to come along. Hearing this, Hanjo immediately fell silent because he felt like the truth would soon be revealed. Shortly, one morning at the weekend, Solha was about to go to meet her parents, but Hanjo stopped her. Hanjo said that he would not come with Solha to meet the parents. Hanjo said that he was going to go far away to continue his plans even though Solha's latest webtoon had not finished yet. Hearing those words, Solha immediately fell silent and realized that she would not be able to stop Hanjo's plans. When Solha arrived at the station, she immediately called Jae-sun and said that she will go, so she entrusted her house to Jae-sun because Hanjo, or who Solha considered as Bang-guk, will leave that same day. Hearing this, Jae-sun immediately rushed to follow Solha to the train station. When he got there, without further ado, Jae-sun immediately said that he would accompany Solha when she was alone and would never leave her again. Solha was confused and could only remain silent. But at that time, she was shocked when she saw Hanjo came there. The story then flashed back, showing the scene a few hours before. This morning, when Solha said goodbye to Hanjo, she showed her webtoon, which turned out to be finished. And at that moment, loudly, Solha expressed her heart that she loves Hanjo, who she considers as Bang-guk, her stepbrother. A scene back to the present. Hanjo arrived to reveal his true identity. But before that, Solha's stepmother suddenly called and told her that at that time, Bang-guk has arrived at their house. Hearing this, Solha was shocked and confused because as far as she knew, Bang-guk, her stepbrother, was in front of her. Then on the train, Hanjo realized that the truth had been revealed. So without hesitation, Hanjo told Sol that in fact he was not Bang-guk, but Hanjo, Solha's cat. However, Solha doesn't believe Hanjo's words, because for her, it was impossible. Even Solha still thought that Hanjo was Bang-guk, invited him to a beach to see the sunset. On the other side, it was true that Solha's webtoon has been released, and now Ji-yeon and all the other employees are reading the webtoon. It can be seen that this time, all of Solha's friends really liked the webtoon story. Meanwhile, when Solha arrived at her parents' house, she lost Hanjo, who suddenly disappeared. Solha and Jae-sun were welcomed by Solha's stepmother. After that, Solha was about to explain about Bang-guk, who was always with her every day. But suddenly, the real Bang-guk came in and Solha's stepmother explained and introduced Bang-guk to Jae-sun and Solha. Solha was shocked and couldn't believe it after finding out that the real Bang-guk had not been with her all this time. Solha then went outside for a while to clear her mind and Jae-sun immediately followed her. Outside, Solha immediately asked who a real Bang-guk was and who had been living in her house all this time. With a heavy heart, Jae-sun told Sol that the person who had been with her all this time was Hanjo the cat man. Hearing this, Solha still denied it and she really didn't believe it. Because she was disappointed, Solha then left Jae-sun. On the riverbank, Solha calmed herself down while remembering her moment with Hanjo, the innocent man who cheered her days up. Not long after, the real Bang-guk came to give a coat for Solha. Accompanied by Bang-guk, her real stepbrother, Solha was crying because she always fails when it comes to love. Later, Bang-guk tries to comfort Sol-ha and asks if Sol-ha is crying because of Hongjo. Bang-guk then told her that he had met Hongjo when he returned to his old house. Sol had then asked whether Bang-guk had met Hongjo or a cat man. She then added that she had always been with Bang-guk and even always ate together. But apparently that person is not Bang-guk, but her own cat who can turn into a human. Sol-ha also emphasized that currently she is very confused because she already loves Hongjo. Hearing all that, Bang-guk is not surprised or even confused because for him, love is a miracle. And loving a cat is also not an impossible thing. Hearing this, Sol-ha immediately had an enlightenment. After that, Sol-ha had an appointment with Hongjo the cat, then went to a beach. There, Sol-ha found Hongjo, who was sitting alone. While remembering the romantic moments she had with Hongjo, Sol-ha walked over to him. Even though it was hard, Sol-ha had to accept the fact that she loved a cat who can transform into a human being. In another place, Ji-yeon accidentally met Do-sik at a bus stop. She felt embarrassed having to wait with Do-sik. The two of them then went on the same bus. In the bus, Do-sik invited Ji-yeon to go somewhere. Apparently, they went to the restaurant owned by Do-sik's parents. After eating, Do-sik and Ji-yeon went to a library. There, Do-sik continued to give sign to Ji-yeon that he wanted them to date. However, unfortunately, Ji-yeon didn't realize the sign from Do-sik because she was an innocent woman. But not long after that, after she waited for so long, finally Do-sik confessed her feelings for Ji-yeon. In the end, the two of them were dating. In another place, Jae-sun, Sol-ha, and her parents were celebrating the father's birthday. They laughed and sang together very cheerfully, while Hongjo could only saw it from outside. Long story short, after that night, several days have passed and now Sol-ha has returned to her house. In front of the restaurant owned by Do-sik's parents, Sol-ha met Ji-yeon and immediately invited her to come inside. After that, Do-sik and Ji-yeon openly announced that they were officially dating. This news made Sol-ha surprised and very happy. When Sol-ha returned from the restaurant, she met Hongjo, who now lives at Jae-sun's house. And now the two of them became awkward. The two of them even looked like complete strangers. Before leaving for work, Sol-ha, who was used to seeing Hongjo before she left, felt such a great loss. Even when she saw Hongjo's cell phone which had been left, she felt increasingly sad. Sol-ha can no longer bear her sadness alone, so she tells Ji-yeon about her problem. She tells her everything about Hongjo. She told about the beginning of their meeting until now they have become like strangers. Sol-ha was really confused and had a dilemma about what she should do between having a relationship with a cat man or having to let go of her feelings. When Sol-ha on the way home, she met Hongjo, who waited for her to come home. But unfortunately, at that time, Sol-ha still couldn't accept Hongjo. She even avoided Hongjo when he approached her. Late at night, Hongjo sneaked into Sol-ha's house just to make sure she was okay. When Sol-ha was sleeping, Hongjo realized that he could no longer be accepted by Sol-ha, so he could only accept his fate. But at that moment, Sol-ha suddenly woke up and saw Hongjo. Sol had then asked how long Hongjo would continue to follow her. Now Hongjo really loved Sol-ha wholeheartedly. Then he said that he would continue to accompany Sol-ha as long as he could. Sol-ha, who really couldn't be separated from Hongjo, then gave permission to Hongjo when he wanted to hug Sol-ha. Since then, their relationship has been improved. They laughed and were happy together again. But at the end of the conversation, Hongjo said that he wouldn't live long anymore and he would die quickly, because even though he could turn into a man, he couldn't have a destiny like humans who have a longer life. Hongjo also said that one day in a short time he will really leave Sol-ha forever. Hongjo hopes that Sol-ha give him a little more time so they can play together. Then the next day, Sol-ha took Hongjo somewhere to spend time with him. Hongjo always accompanies Sol-ha in making her webtoon stories. He even loses sleep just to look after and accompany Sol-ha. One day, Hongjo meets the cat, who can transform into a grandmother. She says something to Hongjo and that made Hongjo's face change. Who knows what the grandmother said, but soon, something would happen to Hongjo. The next day at Jae-sun's cafe, all of Sol-ha's friends were celebrating Sol-ha's success because she had published her latest webtoon. While decorating the room, Hongjo saw something at the window and immediately chased it. Outside, it turned out that Hongjo met a mysterious person who came the other day. The person immediately asked Sol-ha's cat. Hongjo, who didn't want to be separated from Sol-ha, then threatened the person not to disturb Sol-ha. And that evening, the party began. When they were about to have dinner together, one of Sol-ha's friends asked whether Sol-ha and Hongjo were dating or not. And happily, Sol-ha told everyone that they were officially dating. But when they were about to toast, Hongjo suddenly had a headache and dizziness. Jae-sun realized that Hongjo would turn into a cat, so he immediately told Hongjo to take the cake, so that the people there wouldn't see Hongjo's transformation. In the warehouse, Hongjo couldn't stand the pain anymore, so he turned into a cat. But luckily, Solha saw this. Solha realized that Hongjo was weak, so she immediately took Hongjo to the animal hospital. After the cat getting some treatment, Solha then went home with the others. At that time, Dusik just found out that Hongjo is a cat man. At that time, they all intended to accompany Solha. However, because Hongjo had returned to being a human, Solha told them to went home. After everyone went home, Solha asked Hongjo not to force himself to become human because if Hongjo continued to push himself, Solha was very worried that Hongjo would no longer be able to transform into human. Knowing Solha was very worried about him, Hongjo felt touched because this time he saw that Solha really accepts himself as he is. Long story short, one day Jae-sun's father passed away because he had a serious illness. At that time, Solha approached Jae-sun, who was sitting alone. Solha returned to discussing about Hongjo, who looked very weak. Jae-sun then explained that Hongjo had been forcing himself for the past few days to become a human, when Solha had not accepted Hongjo as a cat man. Solha, who realized this was very sad because she just realized how big the risk that Hongjo was risking was just to wait for her. To atone for her guilt, Solha decides to resign from her job so she can spend more time with Hongjo. To meet her needs, Solha focuses on becoming a famous webtoon writer. Hongjo continues to accompany Solha when she is working. Until one day when they are resting, they take a nap together. When Hongjo is sleeping, Solha cried because she was very afraid that the time would quickly separate them. One day, Solha got an interview offer from one of the media because her webtoon was now trending in Korea. The next day, Solha and Hongjo went together to do an interview session. At the beginning, the interview went smoothly. Solha even looked very happy. But when Hongjo wasn't there, the atmosphere suddenly changed. On the other hand, at this time, Hongjo was buying a necklace which he would give to Solha. While at the interview location, Solha was very worried because Hongjo wasn't there. So she didn't care about the interview anymore and immediately went to look for Hongjo. Outside, Solha met Hongjo. Then Hongjo gave her the necklace he had bought for her. However, Solha, who was still worried, didn't respond to Hongjo's gift. When the night fell, Solha told Hongjo to become a cat and quickly go to sleep because Solha really didn't want to if Hongjo falls sick due to lack of sleep. Hongjo then says that he will become a cat and go to sleep, but this time, he will probably sleep for a long time. Because of that, Hongjo asked Solha to accept the necklace. Hongjo asks Solha not to take off the necklace. The necklace will be a symbol that their togetherness will never end even though Hongjo will leave Solha. After that, several days have passed. And for several days, Hongjo has not turned into a human. When Solha was sad, Hongjo suddenly approached her and asked her to go somewhere because Hongjo's time would soon be running out. They went to the banks of the Han River where they first met. There, Hongjo put on a scarf that Solha had given to him when he was little. Hongjo then said goodbye because after that, he will be a cat forever. However, Solha couldn't accept it and didn't want to understand. But Hongjo encouraged Solha to continue to be enthusiastic about living her life, even though without Hongjo's presence on her side. Since the kiss, it was 2 years have passed and it's been 2 years since Hongjo hasn't turned into a human. Even so, Solha looks happy because she can still be with Hongjo even though now he's just an ordinary cat. Now Solha has succeeded in achieving her dream of becoming a famous webtoon writer. And now many people asked her for an autograph. On the day of the inauguration of her comic store, Jae-sun came with flowers for Solha. Jae-sun asked about Hongjo's condition, and he also asked about Solha's condition after separating from Hongjo as a human. But unfortunately, Solha couldn't answer Jae-sun's question. Until one day when Solha was contemplating alone on the banks of the Han River, she was approached by Jae-sun, who was still hoping that Solha would give a little of her love to him. However, Solha firmly said that she would continue to wait for Hongjo until the end of his life. After that meeting, Solha went home. After putting the scarf from Hongjo suddenly from behind, Solha saw Hongjo who had turned back into a human. And now Hongjo will be a human forever, and the drama the end.